Hi, welcome to Control Talk Now, your smart buildings video cast and podcast for the week ending November 15th, 2020. This is episode 384, where Kenny and I just talk about stuff, man, mainly smart buildings, HVAC. Sometimes we'll get into some of his stuff that he did when he was with the CIA and stuff like that. But hey, before we get started, I got to introduce him, your co-host and mine, the man, the myth, the legend, the one, the only, Kenny Smyers, the control man, CIA agent, FBI, Ralph Lauren model from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I was going back to your New York City days, Betty, when you were running Studio 54. So, buddy, how you doing?
Pretty good, Eric. If you ever get tired of what you're doing now, you can always go into one of those talk show TV because it comes natural, it comes spontaneous, and it's very creative.
Well, I've been accused of being a game show host, the game show host of the industry, right? So, and people have told me over and over, without you, I'd have no legitimacy at all. It's like I can make stuff up, but you're the guy who backs it up. I make it up and you back it up. So
it brings me back to that 2012 rendezvous we had. We were at one of those Tritium meetings. Was it a summit or whatever? And you asked me to play hooky from one of the things. I was like trying to hustle down the hallway to get into one of these breakouts. He said, hey, wait, come on. Let's go down to the pool. I want to talk to you. And then it was when you introduced me to control trends and the whole concept, what you were thinking about, and where we could go together if we did it. And man, that's what a long time ago. But the point being is that I don't think I could do what I do if you didn't do what you do. So
we're a good team. But why don't we maybe make this a little special? We got two great guests coming up. But before I tell you what, we'll do this after we bring the guest on, okay? But why don't we let the community in on a little secret, a little history lesson about how control trends got started and something that's never been publicly acknowledged before, okay? So, hey, with that, Kenny Smyers, so stay tuned after the episode. You'll get that exclusive. But how about introducing our two guests, Kenny Smyers?
Eric, I'd love to get some special stuff. This show is going to be worth watching.
Oh, it's going to be great.
We have Fred Gordy. When you talk about cybersecurity gurus, Fred he's the first one that comes to my mind and most people's minds because he took cybersecurity and he applied it to building automation and operational technologies. Fred, welcome to the show, and please introduce our second guest.
Yeah, welcome.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. Again, as usual, appreciate you guys letting us get the opportunity to speak about what we're doing and how we can help. But today I'm really excited because the gentleman from Intelligent Buildings, who I consider not just a colleague but a friend, but also in some respects he's mentored me in certain ways. This guy is from Canada, but he is with Intelligent Buildings. His name's Osman Saleem, and just a little bit about him is he is probably one of the more well-rounded people we have in our organization. He has worked in blockchain. He's also been involved with asset management, facility management. He's worked with REITs. He's been in the IT field. He's also worked in the data center environment, telecommunications. He's worked with several universities and also in the oil and energy and financial services. So again, I'm just excited to have him today. And Osman, take it away.
Hey. Osman, man, thank you so much for being on the show with us, brother. I can't wait to get your perspectives just on everything, because it seems like you are looking at it from multiple dimensions. When I say we're talking about, the state of smart buildings and, vis-a-vis cybersecurity. That's what you guys sort of specialize in. So talk to us a little bit right off the bat about sort of, what you do with Intelligent Buildings and how you work with owners.
Thanks a lot, Eric. Thanks, Fred, for that intro. I'm really excited to be here. Nice to meet you guys, Ken, Eric. Like I said, I've been a fan for a while, so it's really exciting to meet you virtually, albeit, but great to be here. My background is in building automation and controls primarily. I started off with an integrator where I did the whole cycle on design, hardware design, designing systems, programming systems, so software programming. And then I also did a bit of commissioning on the tail end of my time there. And that gave me, that sort of set the foundation for what was to come next. I've also then joined an organization that in our vernacular now is we would call an FDD provider, fault detection diagnostics, where what we were doing at that time was ingesting building automation data, trending it, analyzing it, looking at it historically, seeing where the efficiencies are, seeing where the faults and issues are, and working not just with building owners, but also with contractors, building engineers, over the whole construction cycle, right? So we had customers that were in the build phase, we had customers that were operating their buildings. And then in intelligent buildings over the last couple of years, my role has been on smart building strategy and cybersecurity strategy as well, where we work with executive and senior leadership to formulate the smart building strategy and how we plan that out from a conceptual perspective, and then also from an implementation perspective, where really the rubber hits the road. So that's been primarily my role with intelligent buildings, and we've done a lot of interesting projects, and we've dealt with a lot of different asset classes, from REITs to commercial real estate to corporate real estate to residential, data centers. It's been an exciting journey so far.
Wow. Well, listen, I want to start right off because, Kenny and I primarily deal with the hardware side of things, right? So we, do everything from Distech to Honeywell to Johnson and everything in between. So let's just sort of start, if you don't mind, with what you've seen, changes in building automation controls, the hardware, what you've seen, the players that are getting it, what are they incorporating it, and what are they going to need to do as they evolve their systems to keep up with the demand for what the smart buildings are looking for, and so on and so forth.
Well, we're now pretty much at the tail end of the era where siloed systems used to be the way that everyone operated, especially the vendors and the solution providers. When I started off, the company that I worked for Honeywell, and they were their approach to building automation was to lock in customers to their ecosystem. And so they could get service contracts out of that, maintenance contracts, so on and so forth. And that siloed approach worked for the vendors. I mean, that's why they were successful at it for a long period of time. And now, for the past, I would say 5 to 10 years, that's really been changing. And buildings are now moving more towards an integrated framework, moving more towards having an ecosystem of products and services that are not just bound to one vendor, right? So that's the main shift that we've seen. There's a lot more openness in systems, so to speak, using open protocols. There's been a whole movement behind the scenes there with adoption of BACnet and elimination of protocols that are proprietary. Building owners now more than ever want that variety. They want that openness so that their building systems can integrate. And really, when you have that integration available, there's just so much going on in buildings that it just opens up exciting possibilities. And it opens up a world of insight that previously just wasn't there. It's rare for in a siloed environment, it's rare for one vendor to have all the building systems under their belt, right? Few are capable of it, obviously. The big ones are. They can provide the HVAC, the lighting, they can provide the metering, they can provide maybe other building systems as well. But usually it's different vendors for different systems, and they usually never spoke to each other, they never talked. And when I was doing work, data analytics.
Osman, let me hop in for 1 second real quick,
Yeah.
Because you're absolutely correct. The big vendors, including Honeywell, had their branch operations, and they would have the proprietary system. Now, also in fairness to Honeywell, they were one of the first people to sort of come through distribution and open a system up so the owner did have a choice. He could go to the branch and get the full services, or he could come through distribution and have more of an open system. So for our listeners out there, the owners and engineers, Honeywell does have an open system as well as virtually every other major manufacturer. They typically you can either go proprietary where the branch does the whole thing for you, or you can go open typically through distribution. So anyway, sorry for interrupting, but
I think that's a good point, because that really ties in well to the point I was making about that shift from having that proprietary system over to open system. And really, Honeywell with their partnership with Tritium and with Jace, that's really what opened that door. And then, the building automation industry became went from an exclusive club to having outsiders now coming in, and then really bringing fresh ideas in. And now we're seeing so many solution providers and vendors that traditionally never heard of, and they're bringing fresh ideas to the table. They are designing systems and solving problems that that we've had for a while, but sort of just took it for as challenges of the industry. And so it's an exciting time now where we're having a lot of different diversity of ideas, so to speak, in terms of how we deal with buildings, how we deal with the data that's generated from these buildings, and what we can get out of them, right? So I think that's been a major shift in the industry, and that's been the trend that I've seen over the past 10 years or so.
That's very well summarized, Osman. I was looking through your LinkedIn page, and I saw one of the articles you wrote that caught my attention was the weakest link in cybersecurity. Now, my first guess, is that the human being? No, I'm just kidding. Tell us about that article, because what we're seeing here is the integration now of smart, intelligent buildings, cybersecurity, and then some of the things you just mentioned about the different asset classes, and what's important to them individually. But overall, what is just give us your summary of what you think the link is, or give us a summary of that article, the weakest link in cybersecurity.
Well, you banged the nail on the head. It is the people part of cybersecurity and systems. That's really the link that is the weakest, because of that variability. You can configure systems and you can configure processes in a way that makes them bulletproof, or makes them as close to bulletproof as possible. But when it comes to people and their habits, that's really where we see the challenge. And for an industry like the building automation industry, where cybersecurity has traditionally never been a strong suit of people that are operating in this space, it's a challenge. One of the other articles I wrote was on the need for IT expertise and BAS personnel. And in that article, I quoted a study from BOMA, I think it was, that said that the average age of a building operator is 55 years old. And in my experience, I've seen, there's rarely that I've seen a lead building operator or building operator that is young. It's rare to find people right out of school or right out of college joining this industry, and that's concerning, because these people who have been there for a while, they're a treasure trove of knowledge. They know, they've been at these buildings for years and years. Sometimes as many as more than a dozen or 20 years even, I've seen at the same building. They know every nook and cranny. They know all they're literally like a database of the history of the building, right? And these are the databases that we're trying to build.
Eric calls those guys building whisperers. Building whisperers.
But
yeah, and that's not inaccurate, right? Yeah, go ahead, Fred.
Yeah, real quick, and you bring up a really good point, and this is something that we try to convey. Very quick story. We had a gentleman that was helping us doing an assessment at a military base, and this guy was a treasure trove of knowledge. We asked him a question, he knew, and this is a large base. Well, you can't make this stuff up. The very next day, we were waiting for him to meet us for the next series of assessments that day. And somebody called us and said, I'll just call him Joe for now. Joe's not going to be able to make it today. He was in a car accident. And we're like, okay, can you get well, we got two other guys coming to help you. And we were like, okay. And so these guys showed up, and we would ask them a question. And they go, well, Joe knows that. I don't really know. So that right there, what you just said, is like the biggest vulnerability you can have is having that one person who knows everything. The other side of it is, with that age of you've got the operators who are in their 50s, younger than me. And then you have the young guys. We do have young guys coming in, but here's another void. Is you got the older gentlemen and ladies who know about the building, the mechanical side of it. Then you have the younger ones knowing about the computer side of it. But if you took away all of those senior people away, then yes, these guys can drive a computer. But if you tell them to go run a central plant manually, some of them can't do it. So that's another issue.
No, that's a great point. That's a great point, Fred. I think the whole mindset of the younger folks is to do things remotely, make changes remotely, really, when it comes down to it, getting on your knees in a dusty mechanical room and putting your head under a pipe to see an issue. That's the knowledge and skill set that the older folks have, and there's a bit of work there that needs to be done.
Well, that's again, these are the Achilles heel of our industry, and we work with Ken St. Clair, and we track this. He tells you that you got to have several sets of mentors. So you got the senior mentor, the gray hair, and they have the building whispers. They really do. They put the systems in through pneumatics, electronics, relay mentality, all the way to DDC, and then they kind of transition to a younger mind that comes in that's familiar with IT, or at least computer savvy, networks to get the thing up and running. So we have that partition of information, and Ken said you have to have a younger mentor now. Like, we're not digital natives, so we grew up, we didn't have an iPhone. It was a miserable transition from the little flip phones we had to now at least we've got a computer that we can fit in our pocket. So the digital native aspect is that we don't know how formidable digital capabilities are. And we need to be reminded by a younger mind that there's an easy way to do things. I mean, several times my daughter has corrected me when she sees me writing something down on a piece of paper. She looks at me like I'm daft. What are you doing? Just say it into your phone. Here, buy groceries, get milk. And me, I'm looking for a sticky pad. Something. So I think that like you're saying, it's a really interesting aspect. But
yeah, but hang on, Kenny, real quick. When the power goes off and the phones and the computers don't work, it'll be guys like me, you, Fred, and Osman. You're too young, but it'll be the ones that know how to write stuff down, right? Because people are going to go, "What's writing? How do you do that?" Right? So.
Good point.
Well, and Osman, to your point, Renee Joseph from Johnson Controls wrote an interesting paper back in 2017 about our industry and how the product managers, salespeople, sales engineers, everybody in the business, facility managers, contractors, are all, about 60% of our industry is ready to retire in 2024. Because, just the way this thing happened. Everything grew in a big lump, aged and matured, and there was a middle area of years, 20 years, 15 years, where nobody was coming into the industry. There was no apprenticeship in that period of time. So that we have a big gap here that's frightening. In fact, that we hope that technology and innovation is going to help, get us past that through remote monitoring and artificial intelligence and a lot of the stuff. Like you're saying about fault detection, if you know it's going to break in 24 hours, you can prevent that from happening because it's showing signs it's going to break. But what is your thoughts on the progress that we're making? Are we getting the right people into the organizations that we need, like intelligent buildings? I'm sure you are. What Eric said, you're a young gun to us, so you have, you're going to be holding the baton here for the next 20, 30 years, but is there a mentorship in practice right now with you guys? I mean, do you have you're building your team?
I think that first off, what's happening is that academia is realizing this skills gap. So here in Toronto, the colleges and the universities are now introducing programs that are related to building technologies. We used to have the building operator programs. They again focused on that traditional side of operating buildings manually, whereas now they're much more well-rounded, and there is this partnership between the industry and academia that I think is really, really important with the pace at which the change is coming. So I think that's the first positive point, plus point here, that there is academia has taken an active role in this. I think from an organizational perspective, because this industry now has that pace of technology and growth, it's become much more attractive, so to speak, because for young people, just being a building operator might not be as attractive, coming straight out of, graduating straight out of college or university, but it would be if they're, more hands-on the integration side and really dealing with different technologies that are being buzzed around, right? Like you have data analytics, like artificial intelligence, for artificial intelligence, for example, we have now fault detection companies that are using AI algorithms to really automate the process of fault detection and building improvement and increasing building efficiency. So I think that makes the playing ground a little bit more attractive for the young folks coming into the industry.
Yeah, it's one, we've said this before, but it's one of the few industries in the world, if you want to make a difference in the world and save the planet, right? I mean, there's such great opportunities here. And not only that, now with the data analytics, you can not only say you're saving the world, you can actually go to the bar and show people what you've done, right? Because it's math.
I think what is the term? I think U.S. Department of Energy came out with a statistic. What it is that 40% of the energy consumed in the world is done by buildings. Yes. That's a huge number. And now, if you even make a little bit of difference in terms of technology that's being developed or the way that the buildings are being operated, it's a huge difference. In 2015, I think I attended a conference here in Toronto. A gentleman named Jeremy Rifkin. I don't know if that name seems familiar. He's sort of a futurist, and he has ideas out there. And he mentioned, my memory's a little hazy right now, but he mentioned three main areas where any sort of technological revolution took place. You'd have a massive jump in technology when it came to energy technology. You have a massive jump in technological innovation when it came to transport, and there was one other aspect that he mentioned. And when you look at the world that we live in now, with the whole talk around Industry 4.0, his vision was that the physical buildings would really be the nucleus of all of that. Because the autonomous vehicles, the micro distribution now of the energy grid, all of that sort of can tie in, and the buildings can be, the connecting dots of all of those different technologies.
Yeah,
move us forward.
Let's hop in. I think you got a great point there, Osman. And it's like, if you think about it with blockchain, and maybe for our listeners who might know, maybe just a brief explanation of blockchain, because I know you have part of that. But one of the things I think that enables is for people to sell energy back to the utility. And in other countries, buildings could be great solar, collectors perhaps. And if they can sell the energy back, they could become sources of energy. And, Kenny's predicted for a while that our friends at Johnson Controls, with their battery technology and batteries, are going to set it up in such a way that in the very near future, they'll have the solar collectors or whatever on the top of the buildings. They'll go down to the batteries will store it, and they'll just run off of batteries. But speak about it, because I think this is a real possibility. And I've obviously, vis-a-vis all the stuff that's going on with COVID and commercial real estate, people trying to figure out, people are going to come back to the buildings and so on and so forth. I mean, they could become our new utilities, perhaps.
This is happening right now. We're talking to customers when we speak about smart building strategy. One of the aspects is sustainability and renewable energy. A lot of the forward-thinking customers that we have already are deploying solar fields across their buildings. depending on how viable it is, right? Like if you're located in northern Ontario in Canada, where you're not getting enough sunlight, it doesn't make sense. I've actually come across poorly implemented solar panels as well. There was a financial institution here that had solar panels on their retail branches, and these were branches that were located in remote areas, so to speak, right? And that wasn't such a good implementation of it, and it actually didn't really make much of a difference. But for areas where this is a viable solution, absolutely. Buildings can run off of peak times if they have that storage. Right now, historically, the problem with solar energy has been the battery storage or the energy storage side of it, right? Like you can have a really sunny day, really nice, and you can run everything in your building off of that, possibly. But the moment you have a cloudy day, you have to revert back to the grid or whatever conventional source you're using. So I think battery storage really is a game changer, and we are seeing more and more of our customers in some of their larger assets implement this and use it to their benefit. And I think that use is only going to grow.
Well, didn't Elon Musk, Kenny, several years back, we were tracking him, and he came out with something called the energy wall, which, is primarily for residential. But my understanding of it, and I'm not an expert, so this is a question. My understanding of it was that would allow you to store solar energy for a period of time. Because to your point, the challenge with solar is kind of use it or lose it type thing unless you can store it. Is that correct?
I'm not sure if you're asking me or
I'm asking
Osman.
everybody. Anybody who knows the answer, please
I think,
join in.
Well, just to revisit what you said about the Johnson battery, when we had an opportunity, we were surprised how Johnson looked at the world from a different viewpoint, from automobile batteries all to building batteries. Where in the mechanical rooms, every so many floors, you would have a battery about the size of a car that would do exactly that. And we would couple solar energy with wind turbines and every other thing that was available, and it would be to store this energy in these batteries and constantly keep the battery charged, and then everything would be PoE in the building. Eric and I went out to California one time and talked to a gentleman where the whole building was run on PoE. Everything was power over the internet, and they lived and died on the ability to collect energy, store it, and distribute it through batteries. So I mean, it's going on. It's just like you said, Osman, earlier. It's just, is it practical? I mean, certain parts of the world and certain parts of North America, it's just not feasible to take to depend on solar energy or even wind turbines as your primary source of energy. You have to have multiple. It has to be an integrated, a fused approach towards it. But I think we're really getting some good feedback or interesting items. But you mentioned blockchain, Eric. Osman also has written an article regarding blockchain and the facility management. And I, for one, understand blockchain a little bit, but I don't understand how we would really apply that to facility management.
So blockchain has been a technology that was really hyped up a couple of years ago, and for some reason, I know the reason. That it was not. It really went hand in hand with the rise of the proliferation, I would say, of cryptocurrencies, and particularly Bitcoin, that reached the peak of its value. I think a couple of years ago, it was a little bit more than that, people. So it became synonymous with cryptocurrency, but blockchain really is the foundational technology that enables these cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, like Litecoin, and some of the other ones. Yeah. And so as a technology, I became really interested in it, and I took some time to understand it, to learn it and really see how this would apply. You see, that when we talk about blockchain and when we get over all the hype, how it is the greatest thing ever, it is a technology that at that time, I'm talking 2-3 years ago, even at that time, it was in the conceptual phase. Aside from the cryptocurrency, there have not been large-scale blockchain products that have made it mainstream. So when I wrote that article on facility management, this was also sort of me, conceptualizing and just thinking where this technology and how this technology could apply to real estate. Now, blockchain is really a technology that is radically different in terms of how it's set up foundationally. And there are a lot of issues that the technology needs to overcome, specifically from privacy-related aspect. I remember that when I was learning about this, the new GDPR regulations came out related to privacy out in Europe. And so for people who don't know, I mean, blockchain is this immutable ledger that records any sort of activity, and that ledger is cryptographically linked, where one entry links to another, and it's immutable, meaning it can't be changed. And this provides a record of whatever activity it is that you want to record. And there's some other aspects to it too. But imagine that with respect to privacy. Now, if you have users that are, for example, let's just, for sake of an example, let's say that your user logs or logging activity in your building automation system is done on the back end of the blockchain-based system. You're going to have privacy issues because that ledger that's recording activity is by definition immutable, which means that in this day and age, with the whole debate around privacy and user rights, I mean, you guys down in the States have this whole issue with the tech leaders, testifying in terms of in front of government. What if a user wants to delete their history? Right now, even with tech companies like Google and Facebook and some of the other ones, if you request that all of your data be deleted by law, they're supposed to allow you that ability. Now, with a blockchain, that ability to delete your activity and delete anything that you've done, you can't do that. I mean, foundationally, that's exactly what blockchain is trying to avoid. And the reason the blockchain is like that is because, I mean, there is a sentiment in the different movements of blockchain development that have this mistrust of the mainstream financial institutions. So they want to make all the records available and want to make everything transparent. That hasn't really taken off because of these privacy issues. So I think fundamentally, I think that's something definitely to keep in mind. And I've sort of taken my foot off the gas with respect to that technology right now, because I think that we're still, in my opinion, we're still at least a few years away from having that mainstream. But
let me hop in real quick. But could you use it for certain things? Because I get it, you wouldn't want to use it for everything. But part of the digital currency, and I think what blockchain is, not blockchain, by Bitcoin and some of those currencies are so popular, is because they can't be manipulated. Of course, the downside of it is because I think there's more lost Bitcoin than anything else. Because if you lose your unique code, then it's just gone. Nobody can get it. But things like contracts and things like that for real estate, where you don't want that to be erasable, right? I mean, so can you sort of pick and choose with the blockchain, or is it an all or nothing proposition when you're talking to one of your customers about we want to start implementing blockchain?
It's not an all or nothing. So there are ways, and that example that you gave was one of the ideas that I explored in my article, where service contracts or maintenance contracts or even maintenance logs, these are items that internally an organization would need to keep. We've been there where we've seen a paper clip hanging from the side of a piece of equipment, whether that's a chiller or a boiler or whatever, with a maintenance log, and a technician coming in and scribbling in dates, and it's just really difficult to keep track of that. There are other solutions now out there that have overcome that problem and digitized it. But I think on the back end, basically how the sausage is made for a solution like that, it could implement blockchain technology internally in an organization.
Yeah.
And
Go ahead.
And I was just going to say that there are private implementations of blockchain as well. So there's publicly available blockchains and there's privately available blockchains. And then there's a hybrid in between as well. And those are largely the two main categorizations, and there's variations obviously of them. But privately for an organization to internally keep track of activity, where they'd be able to audit, where they'd be able to go back and see a transaction take place, whether that's a financial transaction or whether that's just any type of transaction, right? I think that there is opportunity there.
Well, I think there are two groups of people that are going to rail against blockchain, at least in that context. One is going to be politicians, because they sure as hell don't want to have immutable records that they can't change or delete. And second is going to be lawyers, because part of what I had read was that, part of what made this really interesting is if I have a lease with you or whatever, or an insurance claim with you, right, is spelled out in blockchain. It can be automated to the point that if I submit, let's just say use insurance, I submit a picture of my wrecked car, my roof, or whatever, then it just takes place seamlessly. The money is sent to me without having to go through other people, right? So that sounds like that could be a good use. But I love the fact that intelligent buildings, has somebody that understands blockchain, because I think it's going to be part of our future in one form or another. And I think it's just cool that you guys are able to do it.
Well, the elephant in the room right now is that, okay, so you have blockchain, you have cybersecurity. And Fred, I'd like to hear your thoughts on it too. Are they mutually exclusive? Or because we know that cybersecurity is something so fluid and things are changing. Can cybersecurity and blockchain are they habitable together? So
I've been sitting here listening to you guys, and you actually have given me some food for thought. One of the things that, and I honestly, I haven't thought about this aspect till right now. If you stop, well, let me back up and say this. I don't want to say good or bad on blockchain, but what I want to say is one of the things that we all tend to do is rush to solutions without foundationally putting things in perspective. And with that, what I mean is one of the things that NIST tells you is you must classify. And what I mean by that is you got to classify your risk. You got to classify your assets. It's classify. So when it comes to information is, for example, the privacy concerns are very valid. I mean, I don't want my credit card information. I don't want things about my personal life necessarily, being somebody getting in and being able to expose that or whatever the case may be, make changes to it. However, in a business environment, when you classify an asset, for example, you may classify that asset. Let's just take a Johnson NAE 35. That Johnson NAE 35 role may be to control the air in a common area, or it may be used to control the temperature in a data center. Okay. Well, which one is more risky? The data center.
Yes.
Because the common area, if I'm a little hot or I'm a little cold, I mean, it's an inconvenience. Okay, it's an inconvenience, but it's not a big problem. So then one of the things that you must do in any kind of cyber forensics is you must be able to access information that has ultimate integrity, meaning it can't be messed with, nobody could have modified it, and that kind of thing. And so when you're classifying that information is vital to the business. It's not vital to you personally, right? So when we get ready to incorporate these technologies, in all accounts, if I want to incorporate every action that an operator does to a system and keep it secure and irrefutable proof that is has not been changed or anything, then there is no privacy concern because you work for that company, right? But then if I'm passing credit card information or something like that, that's a different story. Just some food for thought.
Well, it's really good stuff. We've opened up a lot of interesting topics here. And again, to Osman, to circle back here, you're part of Intelligent Buildings. Intelligent Buildings is clearly a leader in the smart building industry. We discussed, HVAC being one of the fastest growing, industries in North America, and the skills gap, it's there, but we know it. It's being addressed. It's closing. Our industry is becoming more interesting and challenging. So we're drawing more talent to our industries, and then we're dealing with these issues like cybersecurity, blockchain. Where do you see our next stepping point? Is there standards that are going to come about that we know all this stuff, and we're going to be training people so that every building is going to become smart, and every building is going to have some fundamental structure framework in there that deals with cybersecurity? I mean, does this stuff get regulated, or is this all a personal or corporate initiative that people get at different times and based on different needs and financing and stuff like that?
I think from a strategy perspective, cybersecurity is a really, really big piece of that strategy. And now with the proliferation of IP technology and everything using the internet to communicate, cloud services, and all of that, cybersecurity is going to be a fundamental component that's going to be embedded in any sort of a smart building strategy. When you look at strategy, the way that Intelligent Buildings approaches the topic, I mean, it sounds, when you speak of strategy, it sounds like a lot of fluff per se, but there's two ways to look at it. And the way that we approach it from an organizational perspective, we have a top-down approach where we are focusing on the organization's business objectives and goals. And that's really where we start. A lot of times in practice, people tend to throw in technology to begin with, and that's not our approach. We approach the business objectives of an organization, whatever they may be. They might be trying to reduce energy or increase sustainability. They might be able to, they might want to save money on their operations, or just save money by saving energy. Or do they want a great experience for their occupants? Are they focusing on tenant experience so that when someone walks into their building, they're just, their eyes blow wide open and they're like, wow, this is amazing? Or do they want a bit of both, right? So once we've established that, then we go down to, all right, what are the capabilities that will help you achieve that? And what is within the realm of your reality right now in terms of your building, what's possible? And that's sort of where you have the realistic approach, and then you have sort of the pie in the sky stuff in terms of the things that you want to do. And then we move on to, all right, so now we've established your business goals, we've established what capabilities you want to achieve. Then we go into technology. So we don't dive in technology first. We go from their business objectives goals. And the other way to look at it, and this is maybe a more real-world example that people can relate to, is whenever you speak of strategy, it's really a plan to do something, right? So when we say that we start with the business objectives and goals, if you look at it from a timeline perspective, really what we're doing is we are postulating the end point or the goal of the building, because that's really the end state, right? And then we're reasoning backwards. And maybe a really simple example to understand this: let's say I've been invited to a conference. So let's say I've been invited somewhere to speak. So the first thing would be that they'll give me a date, a venue for that place, right? So that's my end goal, is to deliver that speech or lecture or whatever have you, that to attend. Now, once I have that information, then I reason backwards and make a strategy on how to get there. So if it's in a place that's outside of where I live, then I'll probably need accommodation. I'll probably look for hotels nearby to see, okay, what's available. I might not get a hotel for that day. I might need to get a hotel that's, may only be available, a day before. So now that I've done that, then I work backwards to say, okay, how do I get to that place? Do I take the train? Do I take the plane? So then I look at flights, and I might find that, okay, for that specific day, the flight that I have to take actually leaves the night before. And then so you work backwards to where you are right now. And that's really what we're doing with the strategy. We're identifying the business objective and the goal, and then we reason backwards to where they are now and really figure everything out. And cybersecurity, to your point, Ken, that's every step of the way. And that's why when we're developing these strategies from the onset, cybersecurity is a discussion, because we need the systems and the data to be secure. We need them not to be vulnerable to bad actors out there that are looking for easy pickings. So the upside for organizations is that if they set up their strategy right, if they do really basic things in the beginning, if they take simple measures in the beginning, and Fred can attest to this, for if you were to categorize the amount or types of attacks or threats that they have, they'd probably be able to mitigate 80% of that with very simple steps and policies and procedures in place. It doesn't have to get as bad as it does at some organizations where they lose all their data or they're held to ransom. So really, if you start smart if you start smart then and secure, you're mitigating that risk from the onset. So I think
now listen, I got to hop in here because you brought up the S word. Okay. And we're kind of running a little bit out of time. So, as we sort of wind down here, you brought up actually two S words, smart and strategy. And I know you guys are intelligent buildings are a lot more than just cybersecurity, and I totally get the piece about the cybersecurity. But, I think, most of the owners that we talk to now, the real estate owners, are struggling with the question, given COVID-19, how do we get people back into the buildings? I think a lot of the integrators that listen to our show are trying to think, how can we create value, and help with this particular thing? So let's talk strategy, if you would, for a minute. You and Fred put your heads together and give us some, if Kenny Cousins over there, Cousins Property, or Eric Wakefield or Cushman Wakefield or whatever, if we were those guys and you're sitting down talking to us, what sort of tips would you give us strategically? It could be broad strokes, but from a strategic perspective, what should we be thinking about and how should we be thinking about it?
Well, I'll let Fred speak and add to what I'm about to say. I think to just set the stage on this pandemic and the situation, it really has been a roller coaster ride, because this situation, not just the disease itself, has been novel in every sense of the term. Because in our generation, interesting side point, I was talking to my grandmother who's seen the 30s and the 40s and the 50s, and to this day, she's never seen anything like this. Right. So this is a generational thing that's so unique that we don't really know how to deal with it. And that's also manifested in how facility management reacted to this pandemic, where we were talking about things like monitoring people's temperatures and having thermal imaging, how much value that would provide given the investment going into it and the time spent was questionable. And we know now that that's probably not the most effective way to secure your buildings. But I think in a nutshell, facility management and building owners, they need to make their staff feel safe. And, good thing for us is that retail has sort of paved the way for that. Because businesses are open and they are implementing measures out there. There are a lot of interesting capabilities that you can enable from existing technology that helps not just facility maintain that safe environment, but helps the actual occupants stay safe. One of the interesting technologies is people counting and people tracking. This is a technology that right before up into the pandemic, it's funny because the objective of that technology was to really densify the building space that you had. I said I worked for Honeywell. I visited the office a bit later just to see people there, and they had gone down from 3 levels to 2, just really getting rid of that space and everything. And now, after the pandemic, the companies that provide that technology completely did a 180 turn. And now it's all about spacing out because, medical experts will tell you that that's probably an effective way. And then the other strategy that hasn't gone away and that won't go away, that's always been so fundamental, really, that sometimes you tend to miss it, is indoor air quality, air changes, just the basics. We're breathing the same space, same air in indoor spaces. So how often is that being changed, and what's that quality of air that people are breathing? So I think simple, well, I say simple, but some of these technologies aren't simple, but those sort of measures now have a different take than they did before the pandemic. But the focus is really on making sure that the occupants stay safe and feel safe. I think there's a difference. You can keep them safe by having a martial law style of building where you physically keep them apart, but that won't make them feel safe, right? So it's really that it's not really so much of an objective goal, but it's more of a subjective goal of how people feel. But I think that's the challenge that facility managers are dealing with right now.
Fred, why don't you add your, I know you've been anxious to say some things because that's a great topic.
So from a standpoint, Usman made a couple of, everything that he said, I agree with. The only thing that I would add is maybe to make it maybe a little more focused approach is, we've been so focused on making the buildings energy efficient. The guys that are running the buildings, they are tasked with, hey, keep this system working well so that we don't have to spend any more energy or money that we have to on energy. Now we've actually layered on another piece, and that piece is not only do you got to make sure that it's running efficiently, you also got to make sure that it's running cleanly, which means that there's a lot more attention to detail on things like filter changes and how the system is cycling the air. Like Osman said, is you want to make sure that the buildings HVAC systems are living up to what they're supposed to from that aspect. But then also, too, the supporting systems that go along with it, you need to be aware of that. But another key thing is making people feel safe. We do, and this is something that I study. I like to study the effects of events on people, because when it comes to cybersecurity, it's not all about just hacking a piece of equipment or stealing data. It's also about the mental aspect of it. There is a whole group of people that their goal is to create chaos. And if, for example, you've probably heard me say this before, is if we live in a post 9/11 era, so if I'm in a multi-story building or somebody's in a multi-story building and I get into your system and shut the lights off and I lock your elevators, sometimes all I got to do is let you go nuts, and then people will hurt themselves. And this is something I've been predicting for a while, and it's actually, I'm not going to say it's 100% confirmed, but so far in the world, there have been 3 deaths that have been attributed to control system intervention. I'll put it that way. So I say all that to say this, is the bad guys are always thinking. They think all the time. They don't stop. It's not, there's no end in sight for this. This is also another thing they can use. So think about that. They can use it for phishing. They can use it to actually hurt somebody. So the building control guys, the facility guys have got to stay alert and aware to make sure that they're doing their job to make sure the people feel safe.
Well said, Fred. And listen, Kenny, I'll let you have the last question, but just sort of to set the stage, I think more than ever, it's important to have experts in particular fields like intelligent buildings, Usman and, Fred and the team. I mean, you guys specialize in working, again, from the top down, working with the CEOs and the executives. I think you guys are really good at not making it too technical for the CEOs and stuff like that, but understanding the strategy and implementing it. Osman, it's so cool that you're on the team now. Real quick before Kenny asks the final question, what's the best way for people to get a hold of you guys?
Well, you can find us on our website, intelligentbuildings.com. You can also reach out to us personally. We're on LinkedIn. We're very active, both Fred and I. Send us a message, and we'll respond usually within the day. And that's probably the best way for me is to get in touch with me through LinkedIn, and then we can continue the conversation over email or phone or however.
This has been so awesome. Osman, we got to get you to come back on. But Kenny, I know you got a question, so let's
I'll
ask
tell you
the
what,
final question,
this has
buddy.
been nothing short than brilliant. You guys are, this is more fun than watching football. Anyhow, you just opened up so many more thought processes, but, we had this metric, the 330-300 metric, where, it was basically the spend on what it costs per square foot in an office building. You spend $3 for the energy, $30 for the overhead, the rent, the desks, computers. And the 300 metric was the productivity measure of what the people could do and improving that, making it a better environment, like you were saying, Osman. There's a recent article that came out. It was called "New Perspective from Pandemic to Performance: Purpose of Place, History, and Future of the Office." And it really caught my eye because, we know that there's been some extraordinary damage to the value of real estate. And like you said, people feeling wholesome and safe inside of a building is a tricky, subjective thing. But they're saying that this office is never going to go away. The social needs, from esteem to the mentorship and networking, the productive environments that are created inside of a group of professionals inside of a building, the capital requirements. People can't afford some of the equipment they need to do their jobs. They have to go to a building to have access to those resources. And then the management requirements for command and control. So I don't think we're ever going to see offices really and truly go away, the way some of the predictions have been and some of the actual performance now. People, my daughter told me they weren't going to go back to work now to like the third quarter of 2021. I'm like thinking this is going to go on indefinitely. But, I think what you're doing here, guys, is you're adding another metric. Intelligent Buildings now is saying, okay, you've got the 330, 300, but then you've also got another metric of this thing that puts it all together, the cybersecurity, the new technologies, the fault detection, and the smart building factor. Is that something that we can put a metric to that say, that it costs you this much money per square foot to make your building a place that's cyber secure, and creates that wholesome well-being feeling for your employees? Is that a metric that we could ever put our finger on?
I'll take it. Yes. The short answer is yes. But with any company that we work with, there are always circumstances and specifics of how they do business. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you that there'll be a magic, calculate your payments on your car or whatever kind of thing. However, there is
a utility bill.
Yeah. But there is I don't want it to sound like it's a major undertaking in that we got to start from scratch every time. Foundationally, yes, we can do that.
What's your building's IB rating, right? Your intelligent buildings rating, your IB rating. If you have an IB rating of 10 or above, then you're going to get a payback of whatever. And not only that, you can put a sign with a picture of Fred on your building, said this building has been certified by Fred and Osman. It has, and Rob Murchison and Tom Shirtles has an IB rating of 100 plus.
There you go.
Well, see, I see that coming too. In the back of my mind, I see that these endorsements and standards, ASHRAE does its darndest to get things up to speed. Like you were saying, the simple stuff, filtration, ventilation, dilution of air, air changes. We get all these things are undersized. They can't push that much air. They can't do that many air changes. And then heck with efficiency. That's out the window now. I've run it 24/7. So I just, we've got some more challenges, but again, to Eric's point, it's really great to see a fusion of talent that's so strong, like a faculty, in my opinion, like Intelligent Buildings has got one of the strongest faculties in the business. So
well yeah, and our industry's lucky to have you two guys on board too. Guys, thanks so much for taking some time to be with us today. Get you guys come back on in 3 or 4 weeks and let's talk some more.
Sure.
And listen, I think next time we're going to do a stock tip one, because you guys are really good stock pickers. All right, guys, thanks so much. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Everyone.
What great stuff. I mean, intelligent buildings, are they just cornering the market on like the smartest guys on the planet? You know,
Oh,
it's like,
they get their share. Again, I use that word faculty, but that's what it reminds me of, because it's like a university of building automation, intelligent buildings, smart connected buildings. I mean, everything we've ever talked about, buzzwords, and of course their name is a real, a great,
yeah.
marketing coined, term, intelligent buildings. Yeah, I think Fred, I love the way he just has so much passion, and he's so smart, and he just brings the most current information that's relevant. And I like how they make it understandable that it's fixable, it's doable. You got to have a strategy, and then Osman's terms about, for postulating the end state and then reasoning backwards. I mean, these are terms that I think everybody can use and understand and relate to.
Yeah,
So
but, I mean, you think about what you get with these guys, because when we first met Intelligent Buildings, I mean, what they were talking about, Tom Shurtleff and Rob Murchison, what their claim to fame was that, how do we incorporate building automation, get all the stakeholders to sit down at the table and talk together. It was primarily about building automation when we first met them, and now it's just expanded to everything. And now they got somebody on staff that could talk to you about blockchain if you wanted to talk about that. The cybersecurity, obviously, that they're great with that. But I mean, they have so many, like you say, smart people that they bring to the table. So it's a great company and great folks. And shout out to Tom Shurtleff and Rob Murchison from Intelligent Buildings. You guys have done a great job. So
sure have.
All right, Kenny. So do we do this? Do we tell people?
Well, you want to just run across a couple of posts. Tritium Talk 4.9 module signing. That came and went, but I'm sure that if you signed up for it, you can access the archives. Live stream webinar from ACI, live webinar with Brant Cosbaum. It's going to be November 18th, 11 o'clock Central Standard Time. So if you have time, and it's all good stuff, and we'll have a couple more posts. Facilio, we got a post coming up from them. I believe we got one from Scott Mensch and J2 Innovations, and I think that'll wrap up our week.
Well, there you go. There you go. So do we tell them the story about how we got started or not?
All right, just keep it clean. Keep it.
As clean as possible with me and you. So, so we got to go way, way, way back. And I mean, I forget what was it, what the year was where there's a Johnson Controls meeting, and I sit down next to this guy, and I had been big friends with a guy named Tommy Smyers, Kenny's brother, and I sit next to this guy, and he looks over and says, "My name's Ken Smyers. Any relation to Tommy?" And we get to talking. And so I look at Kenny, and at the time I thought I was going to be a painter, an expressionistic painter like Max Beckmann from Germany or whatever. So I was painting every day. And so I look at Kenny, I say, "Yeah, I pay the bills of my job, but I'm really a painter." And Kenny goes, "Well, that's interesting, because I pay the bills of my job, but I'm really a writer. I'm going to write the next great American novel or 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever." So we sort of had this in common. We were both involved in family businesses, yet we both had these passions for the arts, me for painting and Kenny for writing. So over the years, Kenny and I, Kenny would send me stuff he was writing. I'd send him pictures of paintings I was doing. And, when we would see each other at meetings, we talk about art and so on and so forth. Well, the painting kind of came and went for me. I think one of my ex-wives got my my paints, my oils, and my acrylics and all my brushes in a divorce settlement. And years passed, and I hadn't seen you. And I see you and I'd started Control Trends. And, I started Control Trends with the idea that, it would be, great to get some information, and we need to there's a whole story there. But once I got it started, then it gets back to content. I mean, creating content, for anybody that's done a website knows, that is work. So it gives you an appreciation for our friends at Distech and some of the great people that do the websites. It's a lot of work. So I'm pondering over a cocktail at the Red Rocks. It was a Tritium meeting. Gosh, I've got to come up with a post for tonight. What am I going to do? And I don't like to write. I like to do the videos. And I look up, and who do I see? Kenny Smyers, my Kenny Fitzgerald Smyers, the writer. So immediately an idea pops into my head, and I say, Kenny, let me buy you a drink. And so, I got to go to me. I said, "Come on, Kenny, it's a drink. I'm buying." He goes, "Okay, if you're buying, I'm having a drink." So, and one drink led to 2 drinks, led to 3 drinks. And I asked Kenny, I said, "So Kenny, have you been writing lately? What have you been writing? You hadn't sent me anything." "Well, no, man, I hadn't had time to write. It's been busy, it's crazy," and so on and so forth. I said, "Well, Kenny, I got an idea." He goes, what's that? I said, I got a way you can practice your writing and hone your craft and get some stuff publicized. And he goes, well, what's that? I said, write a blog for control trends. He goes, oh, that website, you got a blog for control trends. I said, yeah. He says, nah, dude, I'm in a family business. I'm not sure that would be a good idea. I said, no, dude. All right, here's the big reveal. Wait for it. I said, Kenny, I got an idea. Don't write as Kenny Smyers. Write as Clint. Write a column called The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And I'll put a picture of Clint Eastwood up here. So Kenny Smyers, a.k.a. Clint, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, was the author of that column. And it went on for a while. And then Clint, we just sort of killed him off because you sort of came out of the closet, so to speak. And I started doing things more actively. But that's how you and I started our partnership.
I remember so well. The meeting you're talking about was in Arizona, in one of those really nice, fancy resorts up in the mountains. I remember because at night the coyotes would come out. The idea was to be not walking around there. And I was reading Sir Joshua Reynolds.
That's right.
Who created the
Art
Institute.
Institute. Debate about Joshua Reynolds.
And I remember you were into art, and I said, who was the most magnificent art or painter? Was it Raphael? Was it Michelangelo? And because in this book, at the very end of it, the guy says Michelangelo. And I think I gave you that book, by the way.
You did. I thought, by the way, just so you know, I thought Sir Joshua Reynolds was full of shit. None of those guys were good. But that's just me. Well, we had that debate 15 years ago. Right?
But here, just so check it out. So what he said was, he was telling the King of England that if you want to have an art institute to rival the Dutch and the Italians, we got to get started right now. And the Spanish, because all of Europe was into the Renaissance, and they were just they're creating statues that were just so marvelous that people take people's breath away. So he said, we need to dig in. We need to start an institute. So they began the Royal Art Institute of England by this king's blessing, and then they started recruiting young artists and developing. So and we were doing that with controls. We're doing that with our business. It was a weak stretch, but it still linked the two concepts together, because I think over time that's what we did. We helped define what we were in the middle of, where we were at, where we're going to go to, and to talk about the people and the places that made that were going to get us there.
But I think it's worth noting that every step of the way, there was doubt. It was like when we even did control trends, it was like nobody's going to pay attention to this or whatever. But then, after we did, the blog for a while, then we came up with the idea for Control News of the Week, right? And then it was like the big debate was everybody was telling us that, nobody will listen to that. And maybe a lot of people don't anymore. But then it was like, well, it should only be 5 minutes or 10 minutes. And we go, no, we're going to do long form. We're going to have it be an hour or whatever. And
there was 7 minutes with Rob Allen, and everything I did.
7 minutes of control with Rob Allen. Yeah, that's
yeah.
Right.
So
but we've seen some great people come and go along the way too. We met some incredible people. I was thinking about Tom Rosbach from Honeywell the other day.
Nino DeCosmo too. I mean,
Nino DeCosmo. Yeah. I mean, it just afforded us an opportunity. People later on would sort of ask. And now, podcasting and blogs and all that's kind of a big deal. Everybody does it, but kind of early on, when we started it, people, why do you do it? It's a lot of work. Man, we get to talk to really cool people. I mean,
Chris Eichman, we had some big guys. We were
Jenny
talking
Stentz, and man, it's just been some.
Oh yeah, Jenny Stentz. Yeah.
Don't you remember we did the interview with her, and we were in my Tesla driving down the road, and there's Jenny Stentz.
It was remarkable. Yeah, you guys did a high five. It was a great picture.
Yeah,
yeah. But I'm just saying. So we did. We caught on to it. I remember some of the. And I think your creativity with that the website, that one commercial you did down in the office, it was the first time I saw a green screen. I didn't know what the heck it was. And you're saying, we're standing in front of this thing. You said, don't worry about it. I'll put an image back there. You'll see. Don't worry. Just shut up and talk. And don't complain. And then it went to the. You did the globe thing where it went from, I think it was from Georgia to Dallas.
For the Control Retention Awards, first Control.
And that was like the cool. I'd never seen anything, anybody make that. I thought that was that was just great, And
now I'm not even in the class with the amateurs now in terms of what they're able to do with that stuff. The technology's just gotten so great, and but it's been a great ride. And I guess for our audience out there, it's suffice it to say we really, really appreciate all the support over the years, and it's just been a fun ride. And I don't know how much longer Kenny and I'll do it, but we're going to keep doing it for a while, I think, for sure. But we've made a conscious effort to sort of lay a little bit low. We figure everybody's inundated with Zoom meetings and everything else. We won't have the Control Trends Awards this year. We might, put some videos up from previous Control Trends Awards. God willing, we'll get back on that next year. But, it's kind of a reset. And I think Kenny and I are also trying to find out what would be the next innovative thing that would be creative, that would create value. So if any of our listeners out there have any ideas, please, reach out in comments or reach out to me or Kenny and let us know, because we've kind of been there and done that, right?
Well, yeah, but I think we got the Control Trends Museum and our Hall of Fame thing has residual value that we'll build on. As you said, as you go through different stages of life, and as more time becomes available, and we get more more back in tune with our artistic selves, we'll have an opportunity to come in and sustain that, and find somebody that can pass the torch to, pass the baton to.
Absolutely. All right, brother. Well, listen, man, with that, man, we need to get on with the weekend. But, hey, man, a special thanks to Fred Gordy and Osman Saleem from Intelligent Buildings. Really appreciate those guys. And to our audience, very much appreciate you. So remember, be bold, stay in control, stay relevant, and have a wonderful week.
Indeed, Eric.
Indeed, Kenny Smyers.
And speaking of the thumbs of field goals, go Steelers.
Go Steelers.